Well, hello there, everyone. You talk about right here is like the activity right here, talking about for higher education, for how to finish. And this activity right here, shows right here are some pictures right here, pictures, and as well as like with the coloring sketch right here that I went ahead and worked on freehand, and some of this Photoshop work right here. But basically, that if anybody warrants us toward anybody that they like warrant toward to have these discussions, maybe with the parents or anybody else. Maybe with the counselors or so about for how's it going based on it's like for education as well as the work that you're doing that type of stuff. But on your hand that if we were also think about is like with this type of if we want to call it like maybe the road the long road ahead, like the long progress ahead, is to where that whenever you first get started that you're like warrant to where that a number of things that you don't understand, especially to anybody that may warrant to where that yeah, you're going to maybe have what you call these bad dreams about being in class and thinking you're going to have so many complications and like maybe a few other kids and you're like warrant to where you're nice if you can be like all the other kids to where all the other kids that they understand a lot about what needs to be done, but then you don't, and that kind of puts you on the spot as well. But I also keep thinking about anybody that may warrant to where yeah, if you ever think that you're the only one dealing with it, or if you're alone or some sort, but on your hand I can maybe say as well, I don't know, I've gotten quite a bit used to it, seems like, to where that if anybody were to say is to where that it is like maybe a group of 4 people and thinking about is to where that yeah, that something that maybe just trying to get used to, especially. But you see right here is this picture right here would have been taken when I was very young right here, top like for why I ask questions. And it's like for higher education. And this right here talks about for how to finish. So if anybody were a warrant or that yeah, whenever we graduated, even from kindergarten to go in like the first grade or something like that. I know anybody that may warrant to, especially from back in 1989. If it was about maybe 1988, early of 1990, whenever that this picture. Right around that time, I keep thinking about this picture right here would have been taken about as early as of 19 maybe 1985 or sometime like that. But you're just trying to get these days right, especially. But for like higher education, that during this time that I'm sure like the parents or anybody would more likely think is to where that you were too young really to understand a lot of that stuff about higher education, especially with like computer technology, especially that the type of online training they have nowadays to where just to be able to take care of any paperwork or bills or anything like that, they require like any type of online connection, especially. But you have right here, and anybody that may warrant to where yeah, go ahead and maybe write 1980, but 1988 or some year like that. But I'm like, well, really, I think maybe I'll explain from the other previous postings as talk about for higher education too. But on the other hand, that I can write right here, yeah, go ahead and write for 1988 right here. I'm like, if I want to go ahead and maybe put 1989, but really, if anybody asks me my source of education, that it's like a lot of it that goes back to about as early as 1987. But how to finish though is that a lot of times anybody like wanted to where you would like to have your picture taken maybe at some point and sometimes, or like I say, whenever you finish something. So especially with me, whenever I finally got past the driver's test, it's like whenever by the time I finally passed the driving test, I was able to get my picture taken. So a lot of attention. I'm sure any kids will probably say that they want to have their picture taken too. Like wanted to, well, you got to pass the test, or and I know with me too that whenever I was, especially whenever I was in the 4th grade, I can remember in the 3rd grade actually, in the 3rd or 4th grade, if one of those grades that they were having it to like an activity to where that if you pass your times tables, if you pass the 2s and then the 3s or so, that you would be able to you would earn an ice cream that they would have like maybe 8 weeks as to where that in an activity that was going on in the classroom that and I know if you were to be passing, if you passed your 9s, and then they would have it to where that you would be able to get earn an ice cream with maybe with a cherry or maybe a strawberry on the top or something like that. And if I can remember right, that yeah, I think the highest I was able to pass was the threes or the fours, but it's like they had other fruits and vegetables. It's like they can go on an ice cream, especially, but on your hand too for any kind of awards, especially. So you're like warrantor that whenever you finish up a project and thinking about the number of things that they would more likely that give out, especially like any prizes or awards or something like that, or rewards, but as well as like for perfect attendance or something. But for for higher education, you have right here's with me right here when I was young, and then you have right here is with me right here with say one of my class photos right here. And I know from back in 2001 that this would have been what you call one of the pictures that was like to say from up there at the high school that I was going to. You have right here is like the one it's like for student of the week, and I have right here for Matthew right here. So I even heard that yeah one of these pictures was even of course you published it's like in the papers especially. So they have right here this picture right here, and I'm like wanted to that was or on my sophomore year, and if anybody were warranted toward if I have any pictures, I'll look around and see if I have any from my freshman year, which I know I probably do, but I haven't really done a whole lot of Photoshop work with those. But talk about say for the how to finish though, and like with anybody, if they this right here would be a sketch right here, and I would be what you call the way I drew this is if I were to be covered up in a blanket right here. So anybody that may think about it to where yeah, covered up in a blanket, and you can still see my legs, and it's like the that little outfit that T-shirt that more like I'll be wearing, and you're like wearing toward it. Look at this right here, and thinking about is to where that yeah that you did not even have your shoes and socks on, and then thinking about is for anybody to say that you walk into a kid's bedroom, and then they got their holding out their arms kind of like this right here, and they got their legs kind of all spread out, and they're like wondering hey, what are you doing, daydreaming? Like well, I'm just thinking. so so I know that this right here talk about say for automatic, and it's like for working on his own. So if anybody were to warrant toward that, in order to be able to complete an assignment, a lot of times that they would maybe like to ask for any type of progress, such as to where how much that you're willing to work on your own at your own time about understanding something. So it seems like a lot of my aggravations, of course, comes from whenever I had to ask for assistance a lot of times, and from like what you call this biggest challenge that I know I get real frustrated, like I mentioned before, is that for how we are willing to handle it, to where that how we're able to work independently, as well as if there's like what you call the work like independently insofar as you for supporters, to where you need to have what you call a tutor with you at all times, or maybe a counselor or somebody in your life warrantor that it's been around long enough to the point to where it just seems like you just can't go without it. But on your hand, that let's just say that if anybody were warranted, you just give it another year, and more likely that it's possible that if anybody warranted that maybe you can't take a job just because you need about maybe 500 more hours or maybe 1,000 hours more of tutoring, training or anything like that, any additional training, and so that's why that this picture right here actually shows right here is to where the type of comfort that more likely that I would maybe like to ask for, especially if you're not feeling very well, and I know like with anybody with their kids is to where if you're not feeling very well, and knowing about is to where that for what the more likely that things that more likely that they would be doing have themselves wrapped up in a blanket, or that they will be in there doing their homework, and they got a lot of homework, and I know mentioned before is to where that homework don't bother me, but then as long as all I know is to where if I'm getting caught up with it, because I know like with any students, they're like wanting to where if you got a lot of work to do, and then you start getting behind, and then that becomes to be concerning, especially. So that's just the thing is to where with me though, for my first year, that a lot of things seem to be very challenging, very complicated, and very frustrating. And I know with me, with my years of education, that besides like the disability though, is like with it's like for knowing about any student that may learn to where anything that they don't understand, anything they're able to afford, and as well as for their years of education. And you're like thinking about is to where that think about is to where the first month that you've been going to school and thinking that you got everything under control, and then a few things that start going wrong, you start getting behind. So I know that could be frustrating to a lot of students, and you're like wondering to where that how to be able to what you call it, if you're like wondering to where about where is the finish line. Where is the finish line to where you're able to see is to where that people the type of finish line I'm talking about would be like the type of finish line is to where that people start getting you attention, they start asking you questions, they start becoming very curious about what you're doing. So that's just another thing too, is to where that whenever I draw a picture, and I know I've mentioned before, is to where whenever I draw a picture that I could maybe add a lot more detail to this right here, maybe put like something in the background, but on the other hand, that you just kind of get the basic ideas to where that a lot of stuff that trying to draw me when I was very young too. I'll probably say that I look like I was about maybe 9, 10 years old in this picture. So if I were to be what you call it, sitting on the ground, maybe playing with like maybe a few Legos or a few Lincoln Logs or something like that, a few toys I may have had in my bedroom, and I know that it is another activity I also think about. Everybody wanted to worry about a collection. Now, what is a collection necessarily? And I know, anybody that may want to, or that, yeah, if you're going to be what you call like if there's like a collection of like maybe like comic books or anything like that, or any other type of character, maybe a cartoon character, well, what exactly, what are the ways of how we can describe a collection? And you're like, word to where, well, ways of how to describe a collection more likely would be is to where that where you would have week by week or day by day or so that you will be able to collect one. You'll be able to get one, and basically it's a, I guess if you want to call it a kit, it's like a package or a kit that contains more than about maybe 5 pieces or so of like, say, like a group, is to where for a collection could maybe be like that contains more than 3 pieces. And so you're like word to where, other than if you want to call it maybe a kit, or maybe if it's anything that is related to like maybe a learning your lesson 1 or lesson 2 or something like that, of like a learning programs or anything like that. So you're like word to where that anything that you start working on, and then you may collect about maybe 5 of them, and then you start working on something and thinking about is to where that for being able to collect a number of items about it's like you have these different options, and one of those options could be used to reading a book, or maybe about taking down notes, as well as drawing pictures. This right here, like picture right here of me, and if anybody wanted to, I do like any type of actions though. With actions is to where if you want to go ahead and draw yourself, if you would be laying down on the ground wrapped up in a blanket, maybe like one to where anybody may want to where you're going to have maybe your parents that look at go into the bedroom one or two where are you about ready to go, like, well, you're the ceremony, or maybe like if it was band practice or anything like that. So anything that was related to like maybe school, and you're like one to where that you may not even have your shoes and socks on yet, or may not even have what you want to wear, like for whenever you go to the school and see your friends. But on the other hand, that anything that you're working on, especially, is to where that you're like one to where like a collection maybe could mean a number of things. One of those would be is to where that you have more than what you call that certain piece, or that certain character of some kind, like that certain program. So you're like one to where that you're like thinking about is to where how are you going to be able to build a collection or some sort. But and I guess you could say that a collection could also mean is to where if you actually finish, with purchasing, if you got to buy something, if it's related to like maybe school purposes, and you're like one to where that if it's school supplies related, that we may be surprised about how much do we collect within about maybe a week or so, just knowing about for everything that you need, maybe from your first day at school or on a job or some sort. But let's just say that this was right here was me maybe watching TV, and if anybody weren't to where at the type of look that you may have on your face while you're watching TV, and it could maybe be I could maybe be looking at a train set or something like that, but let's just say that this was right here was me watching TV, and if I were to have Mike was say all covered up in a blanket right here, and think about, especially if you're going to be waking up those couple of nights whenever you're going to be real cold and all snuggly, and you're like wanting to where you have yourself all covered up right there, and like thinking that yeah, sometimes that you may not even have your socks on or your shoes on. It's like knowing about you by like wanting to before you go anywhere really, that you want to go ahead and put on your slippers, or maybe your flip flops, or maybe that anything about maybe socks or shoes on, and thinking about as to where, yeah, that if especially if it's going to be what's called maybe a ceremony or something like that, or yeah, I'll say especially on a date, or maybe prom, or maybe a dance or something like that. So so there may be a number of reasons, but on your hand, for like if anybody were to warrant, to where that whenever you kind of look back at this and thinking that a lot of your drawings that come to people's attention. And before that, it seemed like to where really that not too many people really seemed like that either they were not really interested, or maybe that they didn't quite understand it. And I know, like with anybody, that like with me though, that a lot of things that I do that I don't quite understand. I'm really about what does that mean? What is it supposed to represent? Person, place, or thing, action verbs or pronouns or anything like that. And you're like, one to her. Some of them that may not be no sense, maybe because haven't done all the research yet, hasn't happened yet. So it could mean a number of things, but you're like wanting to where like a source of higher education, that like with anybody with the parents, is to where that we're like wanting to where that maybe the cost of the expenses that they could go up and down, especially, but as well as for online security as well. But one thing I did want to know is like ever since 1989. Whenever I was young, that I think about is to where if I were to be what you call, had about over 50 or so different colored crayons or markers, and then I would actually draw a picture. It may not look, too much anything like this right here, but if anything, maybe just a little bit scribbly, and maybe with a, bubble, bubble like character or something like that. If you want to call it, like say, open box, like a puzzle, to where you're just going to do like a little scribbly character, but if this was right here was me right here watching TV, and anybody that may want to, or you get some ideas while watching TV or so, and thinking about as to anything that you want to draw. But on your hand, for like if it's going to help improve the grade score, especially with like the writing, especially. But just knowing about is to where that we are like any kids that may want to where that you had to have at least 10,000 or so hours of what you call of tutoring or so. So you're like warranted to where that just to be able to take a job doing something. And I know I may mention this before, but what do we call it for whenever we may think that that if we have too much tutoring, and let's just say the type of tutoring service that you're like warranted to where go ahead and include right here for hours, but if we think that we may have a little bit too much of it, and I don't know. I'm like, if you start working something on your own, and then you're like warranted to where that's something that you didn't think that was what you call the correct answer at all, and you're like warranted to where after you take a test and I know like with anybody, whenever you're studying for the final and thinking that you did pretty good on a test, even though if you missed some of them, that you're like warranted to where that you only had so much time to study because of other things that were going on, especially. And thinking about as to where that that you did pretty well on the test, and you were able to earn about 25 points on the test, especially with the assignment. And so that's just the thing too, is to where that do we kind of call it what you call a dysfunctional type moment, to where that whenever stuff that starts working on its own, whenever you're anything that you're working on, especially any programs that you're working with, that they start working on their own. Whenever you start doing stuff on your own, I guess that basically could mean as to where results as to where that a lot of the things that you're doing independently, and it's automatically being done, and that could maybe be signs as to where that you are pretty much capable of doing this on your own now, and you don't need as much tutoring service, and I know like with other students that they may need see a few or so training hours of tutoring. So I'm sure maybe by next year or so that I'll have maybe have more information, more answers to her, if anybody that wants us to her, that back during this time right here that I could have been what you call maybe a little bit of an independent learner, and sometimes it was like would say like for supported to where that I had to have a lot of speech and as well as like a lot of tutoring time as well. And then this picture right here is like for it's like before I even started kindergarten. So anybody that may want to a lot of years of your education and just think about to where how to finish it. And I guess one thing that we can maybe remember too is to where if anybody will say you look at some of these pictures right here and you're like Warren Tour about the type of attention that more likely that you could be getting by the time you finally reach the finish line. So the finish line could be is like for graduation, you've earned enough credits to graduate. Yeah, you have finally completed the last assignment. You completed your first year, your second year of school. It's like college, and then you're ready to get it. You'll go on to into the workforce. And some people, some students that may say that this is happening a lot quicker than what I thought. I thought it would take 3 years to get there, but then now it's now after about maybe a year, and now they're saying is toward it it's that stuff that's going to be happening later on in the fall. And so it's like with anybody like me though that you give it a year and then you're like thinking about as to where that that really that how do we know whenever we're ready, like you're like Warren to where I'm not ready. And this picture right here shows right here with my shoes and socks on right here. I actually with my socks. I think it was my socks on, but anyway, I have my socks on right here, and I think it's like a few other pictures I have my shoes and socks on. But then this sketch right here, if I were to draw, is like to where that anybody say, well, look at those little toes and look at those little hands of like what's with all the attention, really? So if anybody warrants us, Tor, especially if you're not feeling very well and thinking that you got work to do and you're like Warren Tor, if you got a headache, you had a headache last night or you were tired the other night and thinking about us, Tor, anybody that may warrant Tor, that you may have been dreaming those while back whenever you were much younger, whenever you were about 11 years old, you may have been dreaming about thinking about us, Tor. A lot of the kids, they're going to come to you, they're going to come and visit you even on the day that you're going to be sick or so, and you're like Warren Tor. They'll like say is to her, hey, can you tell us a little bit about your paper or maybe about the storybook, to read about and then as well as taking notes about. So it's like you're like Warren Tor, anybody that more likely that gives you any kind of attention. And think about it to where if this was like any type of contest, especially if this was a contest, and you're like thinking about it to where that really that you draw a picture, then then you go ahead and follow the directions about what you got to do. Oh yeah, go ahead and enter into the contest, and then by the time that your name is drawn, and then like one to where like prizes, and they may want to do an interview with you about something, and you're like one to where interview. What interview? The interview. Based on that sketch that you were working on, and based on what you call that degree in study. And whenever you graduate, and then for any work that more likely that could be published one of these days, possibly that people are going to want to do an interview with you. So you're like Warren to where that a lot of that stuff that maybe you're just not used to. And I know I talked before about this tour about anything about it's not really supposed to be what you call a nervous, scary situation, but on the other hand too, you don't about to feel proud. So anybody that may want to where that family reunions or maybe if it's graduation that you're not gonna be used to being in a room with that contains more than 100 or so people, especially people that you may have only met them maybe on Facebook or so, but then you're like one to where you never met them at really in person or so, or you may have seen them one time in person. But on the other hand too, a lot of that a lot of the work from what you were able to finish, especially and think about as to where the next set up like the next goal could be is to work getting a job or so you're like with anybody that any type of story that you may want to share, especially and talk about, especially, and it seems like that they all just they all come together very slowly to the point to where it's like the people start warning about something, and you're like warned to where that really just take it one thing at a time. But for whoever that's curious, huh? But on the other hand, too, for like anything automatic and I use automatic, by the way, it's like another word for like say if we want to call it like for independent. So that if we're used to having like maybe like an instructor, like a driving instructor that You may be used to so many hours of having a passenger in the car next to you, as a driving instructor, and they're going to tell you the directions, and they're going to tell you how to handle your driving. You gotten so used to having somebody there to guide you to the point to where that you start talking, and then think about it as to where that person though that person who was guiding you, that they say, yep, well, you're able to do it. You're able to do it independently now. It's like that work allowing to where that you're able to do that stuff on your own now. So think about it as to any job that you do get, and you got quite a bit used to it to the point to where that. You're like Warren toward it. It seems like anybody say that, yeah, it may seem a little bit, a little bit hard getting used to, and a little bit weird. Just think about it to where you gotten quite a bit used to it, to where a couple times for whenever that it's not there right away, and you're like Warren toward it. Yeah, well, more likely you can tell them about how everything's going, but it seems like that's just all about what it is. It's about whenever you start doing stuff on your own, and then thinking about those other kids or so that they may think as to where that number of things maybe that they have difficulties trying to understand, especially. So we ought to know about is to where that what's the most important thing that maybe we can tell anybody about education wise, and one of those will be is to where that really we may think that we're alone having to deal with a problem. We may think that that this is that we got to learn that well, that's your problem, but showing about how much that we are willing to support one another, especially like I may have mentioned before, and on the other thing I maybe had not mentioned about is to where that anything that I may just been working out, as well as you solving, as well as anything I can maybe come up with, and anybody that may ask as to where that any paper that I may have been working on. I put this last, by the way, just because it's something that I just kind of did at my own time. So anything on my own time, I may think that has nothing to do with what's required. So if anybody wanted to where that anything that needs to fulfill the requirements, that this right here will be something that I just worked on at my own time, compared to like this picture right here would have been taken at the school, and then this picture right here would be taken about at the parents, like the parents visit or so. But you're like Warren to where anything related to school stuff, and think about as to where anything that you want to do maybe during between your spare time, and then for any time that's required during the study hall hours, or any type of tutoring hours especially. But anyway, talk about say for higher education, and it's like for how to finish, and knowing understanding about the purpose of it is to where understanding about about higher education as well. It's like knowing about anybody that may want to, or any questions that more I can ask about as to where how do you begin, like how do you finish this up, or and then as well as for any other questions as well. But anyway, but knowing about really about how to ask as well. But on your hand, you're like Warren to where we would think that maybe that people say the answer to that question, or you just want to know somebody's own word of saying. But on your hand, I talk basically for what we understand about your people's education is like how to finish. Man Made 25, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.